Next on the 5 o'clock report.
They're already ramping up.
The worst first.
I am aware of at least 3 now.
Scaring a child to death.
It's an honor to serve on behalf of the country.
We want to go see my mother.
We need the rain.
All I remember are the eyes of the prisoners.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Hanging on in wicked winds. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. The week is off to a very windy start. Several counties in New York and PA under high wind warnings and advisories right now. At least 3,000 without power in western New York already as those winds make themselves known.
They're already ramping up, gusting into the 50-mile-per-hour range early this afternoon and perhaps 60 to 65 by late afternoon and during the evening hours.
WIVB meteorologist Mike Syka. Many of the outages now are in Niagara and Orleans counties. High winds have prompted some cancellations of afternoon and evening activities. We've also got winter weather advisories on the lee sides of Lakes Erie and Ontario, where even with Lake Erie mostly iced over now, lake snow could still total up to 18 inches by Wednesday. Kevin Williams' updated forecast just ahead. A promised illegal immigration crackdown turns to reality.
Anybody in the country illegally, they're on the table, but we're going to go after them in a prioritization that makes sense. The worst first.
Border czar Tom Homan, close to 1,000 arrests over the weekend, another 500 detained. That ICE crackdown apparently includes Rochester, New York, where City Council head Miguel Melendez tells WROC.
I am aware of at least 3 now visits in the city of Rochester, home visits. Don't know what the details are.
And Hazleton, Pennsylvania, school board member Bob Childs tells WBRE he has concerns about ICE.
There's a fine line between educating a child as to what can happen and scaring a child to death. And our administration is very much aware and sensitive to the whole issue.
Also this weekend, a standoff between President Trump and the president of Colombia. The South American leader at first balking on allowing flights of deported expats to land there.
Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, said Sunday he wouldn't accept U.S. military deportation flights because the U.S. cannot treat Colombian migrants as criminals. In response, Trump said he would impose a travel ban on top Colombian officials and 25% tariffs on imported Colombian goods that would jump to 50% in a week.
CBS's Ed O'Keefe, the Colombian leader, then backed down. A new boss at the Pentagon.
It's an honor to serve on behalf of the president, serve on behalf of the country.
Newly confirmed Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who needed a tiebreaker vote to win Senate confirmation. His appointment signals a coming shakeup in the Pentagon, including a new presidential executive order that seeks to right what many saw as a wrong during the COVID pandemic.
The plan is for him to sign this executive order to reinstate service members who were dismissed for refusing the COVID vaccine with full back pay and benefits.
Fox correspondent Peter Ducey. Other orders Trump is expected to sign would ban transgender military service members and eliminate military DEI programs. Thousands of people displaced by the war in Gaza starting to stream back into what's left of their homes after more than a year of conflict there.
We want to go see my mother and father, said Ahmad Adas. It's been a long time. They were stuck, amassed at closed Israeli checkpoints for 2 days.
CBS's Remy Inocencio. Israeli officials say it's likely there are Hamas fighters mixed in with those returnees. Good news, bad news in Southern California. Good news, heavy rains have helped firefighters get a strong grip on wildfires that have burned for over 2 weeks. The bad news, those rains threatening to trigger landslides in areas that those fires deforested.
We're happy to have it here because we need the rain. But obviously you don't want torrential stuff.
If it's heavy, it'll cause the mudslides which traditionally come after the fires.
Still, thousands of Californians waiting to get back into what's left of their homes. It's called DeepSeek AI, and the most downloaded free app on the online Apple App Store this weekend sent tech stocks into a Wall Street tailspin today.
This idea that a Chinese startup can come from practically nowhere and be competitive against some of the biggest AI companies raises larger questions about how competitive these U.S. companies truly are.
Tech expert Ian Shure. Holocaust Remembrance Day. 80 years ago, the liberation of the infamous Nazi Auschwitz concentration camp in occupied Poland.
Augen, not Augen. Eyes. All I remember are the eyes of the prisoners, recalled David Dushman, the last living liberator from the Russian army. The camp is empty, this German newsreel would say soon after, but the traces of Nazi extermination are all around, from the emaciated bodies piled like logs on the ground to the unused canisters of poisons used in the gas chambers.
That's CBS's Vicki Barker. Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, a heap of help for chilly New Yorkers celebrating a reunion in the Southern Tier and a recap of this week's top issues in education.
I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. The strongest winds will be this evening across western New York and northwest Pennsylvania, gusting past 50. Farther east and south, more of a stiff, gusty wind. Flurries, snow showers, couple of squalls into tomorrow morning. An inch or two for many, several inches in areas east of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Low temps, teens to near 20, and in the 20s to near 30 tomorrow with some leftover flurries. A little more snow comes our way tomorrow night and Wednesday. High temperatures Wednesday in the 30s.
Thank you, Kevin. Checking the stories now, making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Temperatures still pretty low, but aid is rising. Family Life's Sarah Harnish now with word of the newly reopened Home Heating Assistance Program in New York.
Governor Hochul has locked in $35 million toward a program that helps low-income New Yorkers keep their homes warm in the winter. The new cash infusion into the Home Energy Assistance Program, known as HEAP, means New Yorkers can begin applying for heating assistance again. The state stopped accepting applications last Tuesday because they ran out of money. A family of four making less than $6,300 a month can get up to $900 over the winter for heat. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
Thank you, Sarah. The Grace Baptist Church in Dansville, New York, held a celebration service on Sunday for 42-year-old Ryan Corbett, who was released by the Taliban in Afghanistan last week after nearly 900 days in captivity.
It kind of makes it real for all of us. It reminds us that no matter what's going on in our life or how tough it gets, that we have someone we can lean on. And it's a huge blessing.
That parishioner telling Spectrum News the Corbetts are a close-knit family and that their faith sustained them.
One of the reasons they were so successful in getting him home was because, they loved him, they loved each other, they're very close, and they used that to kind of, move forward and keep pushing.
Corbett, who was let go in a prisoner swap, continues to recover at a military base in Texas. A Japanese firm's controversial plan to merge with Pennsylvania-based U.S. Steel isn't dead, at least not yet.
Ankara Holdings, an activist investment firm, is pushing U.S. Steel to drop its planned merger with Nippon Steel. The Wall Street Journal reports Ankara is not interested in pursuing a sale of U.S. Steel to another party. It wants to make changes to improve the business. Both companies continue to pursue the deal, which is now in the courts.
That's business reporter Ginny Casolda. Former President Biden and President Trump have both raised objections to the plan over security concerns. A new school safety bill is in the works in Pennsylvania. This one would require silent panic alarms in all school buildings. The alarm would be activated in cases of emergency, whether it's a fight or something worse, like a school shooting.
Every event that's happened, they always said the same thing. I didn't think it was going to happen here, right? So you have to have that mentality. It is going to happen here.
Eric Richardson is the assistant police chief of Hanover Township.
We're always a step behind when there is an event because the shooter knows or the threat is here before we know it, and then it's our job to catch up. So every second matters.
The cost associated with those silent alarm systems is what kept the school safety bill from becoming law last year. Class isn't dismissed yet. Next up, highlights from today's Issues in Education feature with our Bob Price speaking with veteran educator Dr. Ralph Kerr at the Teaching and Learning Institute in Houghton, New York. They begin with thoughts on New York Governor Kathy Hochul's proposed increase of nearly 5% in state education spending.
Normally when we talk about education, we talk about reading, writing, and arithmetic. Today we're talking about another 3 R's, re-election, re-election, re-election.
Okay, I see where you're going with this, yeah.
Yeah, there's no way that you can justify this kind of increase. The governor spent, I don't know how much money to have the Rockefeller Group do a report that said that with declining enrollments, the state needs to look at decreasing education spending because it just can't be justified. And yet, here the governor comes with a 5% increase. Nobody is going to get less than they got last year, and it just can't be justified in my mind given declining enrollment. Even though schools have increasing costs, we've got to begin to look at this catastrophe that we're headed for. Although having said that, I've said for almost 30 years now that the trajectory we're on is unsustainable. But apparently the governor doesn't think that's true, at least not this year when she's up for re-election.
Yeah, but we'll see. I mean, you said it before, Ralph, as long as local districts continue to approve this kind of stuff, they'll continue to ask for more. So,
Absolutely.
One of the things the governor said in her State of the State speech, she wants to give free tuition, SUNY tuition, I might add, a very important distinction there, to older New Yorkers. This is, I think, the ages 22 to 55, something like that, who are pursuing degrees in high-demand fields. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, like you said, it's for free SUNY tuition, which is an absolute slap in the face for every private institution.
Yeah.
And both you and I care deeply about Houghton University, and I'll just use that as one example. That's just a slap right in Houghton's face, because they can't match free tuition for anybody. While I'm supportive of the concept of people getting degrees in teaching in what she called high-demand fields, which they certainly are, I think this is just a long way to do it. And again, it's not free for people like you and I who are going to pay this bill.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's a bad policy decision all the way around.
Yeah. And we thought we'd hear it in the State of the State. It turns out she mentioned it in her budget address. This statewide cell phone ban, bell to bell, no cell phones in the classrooms, in the cafeterias, or in the hallways. It would be up to the local districts to decide, how to retain those cellular devices. But do you believe that a policy like that is warranted when so many districts already have some type of cell phone policy?
The short answer is no, but when you look at the underlying pieces of her proposal, it's not an actual ban. What it says is no unsanctioned use of smartphones. So I mentioned a few weeks ago that some teachers use smartphones as part of their instructional process. Mm-hmm. So this would certainly allow that. Also, it would allow schools to develop their own plans for storing smartphones. So who knows what that might be.
Yeah.
And then it would require schools to give parents a way to get in touch with their kids. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is $13.5 million to fund this whole thing, which is, again, is just another gift to schools.
Dr. Ralph Kerr speaking with our Bob Price on this week's Issues in Education, which airs in its entirety during the Noon Report. And, of course, you can catch it online in lots of ways. Subscribe, listen to, and share that and all of our original podcasts at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or FamilyLife.org. Your nightly market report is up next, brought to you by Faithward Advisors. Wall Street closing mostly lower after a massive tech sell-off. The Nasdaq fell more than 3% in a technology rout linked to Chinese startup DeepSeek and artificial intelligence. AI-related names plunged, with NVIDIA and Broadcom dropping 18% over concerns over competition from the low-cost Chinese version. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 289 points to 44,713. The S&P 500, though, lost 89 points to 6012, and the Nasdaq fell 612 points to 19,341. Faithward Advisors, a Christian financial planning firm helping faithful stewards do more. Details are available at faithwardadvisors.com. This is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
Hi, I'm Rob West with the Faith and Finance Minute. Before you retire, ask yourself 2 questions. These questions aren't about retirement accounts and Social Security, but your financial and social outlook. Financial writer Jonathan Clements raised these key questions in his blog, Humble Dollar. First, how can I transform myself from a diligent saver to a happy spender? Clements notes that many people save for years to get ready to retire, but then are afraid to spend that money when the time comes. Another question, what will get me out of bed in the morning? Many people retire only to find they have no plan for how to spend their time productively and enjoyably. By thinking about these questions ahead of time, you can be better prepared mentally and emotionally for retirement. Get biblical answers to your financial questions in the Faith Fi community. Download Faith Fi, Faith and Finance in your app store or visit faithfi.com.
Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, a delivery driver who delivered when it really counted.
I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. The arrival of a potent front will kick up some snow and more wind tonight, and that'll produce some tricky travel, even though the amounts of snow will be held in check. The strongest winds now will be diminishing overnight, but they'll be ushering in much colder air along the way. So our forecast shapes up like this. The strongest winds will be this evening across western New York and northwest Pennsylvania, gusting past 50. Farther east and south, more of a stiff, gusty wind. Flurries, snow showers, couple of squalls into tomorrow morning. An inch or two for many, several inches in areas east of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Low temps teens to near 20 and in the 20s to near 30 tomorrow with some leftover flurries. A little more snow comes our way tomorrow night and Wednesday. High temperatures Wednesday in the 30s.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Finally at 5, during last week's southern snowstorms, an Arkansas delivery driver went the extra mile. Eduardo Garcia's next stop was to Brooke Kochel's house to deliver heaters, urgently ordered after their power had gone out. But then Garcia's vehicle went off the road into a ditch. The driver messaged Brooke with the bad news he wasn't going to be able to make it. Well, Brooke messaged back saying they desperately needed the heaters for her husband, who's in the middle of chemotherapy. Well, that's when Garcia went into overdrive, arranging to meet Kochel halfway on foot to give her those heaters.
One of the worst times of our life. He said, I've gone through hard things in my life, and at this moment I was able to do something for someone else.
There was no other option. We had to get him here.
And he did. Garcia refused a tip for going the extra mile, instead just wanting to meet Kochel's husband and vowing to help them walk through his journey. And that's the world we live in for Monday, January 27th, 2025. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.